Please welcome Lauren.
Hello, hello. We didn't get a chance to test stuff out here, so this is going to be a little bit of a live experiment as we go. So I wanted to start out with a video clip. We'll see if our sound works. This is a video clip from an upcoming movie. And in the movie, it's a story about a guy and a girl. They're in a relationship. And the guy accidentally uploads a very personal, sensitive video to the cloud. I lost my mouse.
It went up. It went up to the cloud.
You can't get it down from the cloud?
Nobody understands the cloud. It's a mystery.
So my hope is that by the end of the session, I'm sure many of you are familiar with the cloud, but my hope is that by the end, the cloud will be a little bit less mysterious. So let me introduce myself a little bit. I'm Lauren Schaefer. I am a software engineer for IBM. And you might be able to tell from my accent, I am not from around here. I'm from Delaware, which is on the East Coast of the United States. So quick housekeeping, if you want to get a copy of the slides from today, you can visit jfocus.mybluemix.net. It's a very ugly website. Please do not judge my web development skills based on what you see there. But I did throw it together in 5 minutes, which shows how easy it is to put a website on Bluemix. If you happen to be live tweeting, you can use hashtag code for the cloud. Okay, so let's go ahead and jump right in. So this is a picture of me last year at a conference. Admittedly, I had blonder, straighter hair at the time, but that is me, and I got to try out the Google Glass. And I saw here somebody yesterday took a picture of the conference with the Google Glass on. So has anybody else tried out the Google Glass? Yeah, several people. So it's pretty cool. I tried it out and I was like, oh, I'm not really sure if the Google Glass is for me. But there was one app that I found exceptionally helpful, and that was the translation app. And at the time, I was like, I'm not sure about this, but now after being here in Sweden, I could see how it would definitely be helpful. So in the demo, they had a sign in French, and we're going to get Facebook notifications. All right, so there was a sign in French, and I looked through the Google Glass, and it transposed the French writing with English, which was really helpful. So you guys are really cool here in Sweden. You have a lot of things written in English already, but it would be handy as I'm, browsing a menu sometimes to have something like that. But the point is, we all use apps on a daily basis, right? You might be using apps on a Google Glass. You might be using an app on your smartphone, on your tablet, on your laptop. We're all using apps, and some of you are probably multitasking right now and using an app as I speak. But the app revolution has fundamentally changed the way we interact with technology. If you think about how things have changed over the last 5 years, architects are able to design houses just by using their tablets. And runners can go out for a jog. This is how runners jog in my mind, with a Fitbit on, and they'll go and they can see how fast they were jogging and where they went and their total distance. And that's all made possible through the cloud. What we can say is that while the cloud is changing things, we've learned that experience matters. So if I go and I'm shopping online and I buy an item from an online store, I expect that if I don't like it, I can go into the brick and mortar store and return it, right? Or if I go and I use my Fitbit, I go out for a jog, I expect that I'm going to be able to access that data on my smartphone, or I'm going to be able to access it on my tablet. The experience matters, and the cloud makes that all possible. So as developers have had this increased pressure to develop apps, their expectations have increased. So let me give you a few examples. So developers want to be able to deploy their app in seconds. They want their apps to fail fast. They want to leverage continuous integration and continuous deployment. They want to be able to focus on their code and not all of the underlying infrastructure. And they want to be able to quickly stitch together their apps using useful APIs and services and libraries. And finally, developers, we want a choice of whatever language we want to use and whatever tools we want to use. So in response to these developer expectations, cloud vendors have come up with pretty much 3 different service levels, and I want to talk through those with you today. So we've got infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, and software as a service. So with infrastructure as a service, you outsource the hardware. But it's more than just the hardware, right? You're getting the energy that, you're renting out the energy to power that. You're getting the cooling capability and the cloud storage. So let's take a minute. I'm sure some of you have used infrastructure as a service. Let's brainstorm some infrastructures as a service that you are familiar with, if you just want to shout them out. Come on. No shouting. This is sweetening. Okay, that's what somebody told me yesterday. It's just not going to happen. But I know you guys, I don't want you wafting off thinking about dinner, so let me give one example. EC2. All right, I'll take it. So Amazon EC2, SoftLayer, Rackspace Managed Infrastructure, VMware, Joyent, and Google Cloud Storage. All right, sitting above that, we have platforms as a service. So platforms as a service basically takes care of all of that underlying infrastructure, gives you a platform. You can take your app that you've coded, plunk it right onto the platform. So this is really nice because you're not having to deal with any of the underlying infrastructure. And commonly, platforms as a service will give you services and libraries and APIs that you can leverage so you can more quickly put together your application. So does anybody have an example of a platform as a service? Heroku, thank you. You guys are a tough crowd. All right, here's my list. I've got IBM Bluemix, Amazon Elastic Beanstalk, Google App Engine, Microsoft Azure, Web Methods, Agile Apps Cloud, quite a name there, Rollbase, and Cloud Foundry. All right, and sitting at the top of the triangle, we have software as a service. And software as a service basically refers to any software that you can access completely over the internet, typically via a thin client like a web browser. And I'll note here that software as a service is not necessarily specific to software development. So a good example of a software as a service is Gmail, right? Something we all use every day. Does anybody have any other examples of software as a service? It's the last one. Google Docs, yes, yep. So there are tons of examples, and it's a very small part of my triangle. So I listed IBM DevOps Services, Google Apps, Salesforce, and Hotmail. But there are tons of options there. So I'll take a minute and note that as you move up the triangle, you're going to get more standardization, but you're also going to get faster time to value and lower costs. And if we think about moving in the reverse, moving down the triangle, we're going to get more standardization, more customization, and slower time to value and higher costs. The other way that I like to view the infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, and software as a service model is through what I like to call the triangles of pain. And these triangles represent different pains that developers we face as we're developing apps. So we'll start in the bottom left triangle. We've got things like dealing with your hardware, your storage, your network, configuring your operating system. And that's where infrastructure as a service comes in. But then you still have a whole list of pains above it. How you're going to deal with your data, your security, configuring your hardware, that sort of thing. And so that's where platform as a service comes in. It takes care of all of the things on the left triangle. But then developers were still stuck with dealing with things like how to set up your tracking and planning, your building and your deploying, your source control management. And that's where software as a service can come in. So I did a little research before I came here, and I found this study for 2015. And it said that enterprises predict they will increase their spending on cloud computing by 42% in 2015. Just think about it. Enterprises are going to increase their spending by 42% this year. So as I'm talking here, just take a minute and think, how can you or your organization benefit by leveraging one of these cloud service levels? All right, so now I'm going to move into a live demo because public speaking is not terrifying enough. Let's throw in a live demo and see what happens. So I know some people like to learn by doing the big concepts, which is what I just went through. I like to learn through examples and seeing the details. So I'm going to be demoing two different products. They're called IBM Bluemix, which is a platform as a service, and IBM DevOps Services, which is a software as a service. I'm going to use these because they're examples that I work with on a daily basis and they're what I know well, but obviously the concepts here apply to any of the platforms and software we just mentioned. So we shall see. So my laptop did not cooperate and I'm not able to see the screen. So I'm looking at this monitor down here. So this is going to be a little awkward. We'll see what happens. So I've logged into bluemix.net and I'm going to open up the catalog. The catalog is your place to browse different boilerplates, runtimes, and services. So a boilerplate is essentially a sample application. Runtimes provide support for whatever language you're choosing to use. And then we have a variety of services. So we've got things like Watson, mobile, DevOps, web and application, data management, Internet of Things. There are tons of options here if you want to browse around. I'm going to start with a boilerplate so we can get started really quickly. And I'm going to start with the user modeling Ruby web starter boilerplate. So I'll create a name for my app. And click create. So this app uses Watson. So I asked people yesterday, and rumor has it that Jeopardy does air here in Sweden. You guys familiar with Jeopardy? Okay, so on Jeopardy, IBM built a supercomputer named Watson that competed on Jeopardy, and Watson dominated. And it was pretty cool because Jeopardy is a bit nuanced. You have to understand a lot of the language. It's a lot of natural language processing. And Watson mined the internet for the answers to these questions. So this particular app uses Watson, which is pretty neat. So while we're waiting for this app to start up, I'm going to start with a Jeopardy question. So here's the clue. This term for a person who works for various employers comes from knights who sold their skills. Any guesses on what the answer would be? What is freelance? That's right. Oh, audience participation for the win. Thank you. Okay, so while we were doing that, my app started up. So I'm going to go ahead and open it up. Here we can see this is the URL I just typed in. And this is a very simple application. And what it does is take a block of text and you can analyze it. And Watson's going to tell you a little bit about the author. So this particular sample is from Moby Dick, so we can learn emotionality is only about 32%. And then we can scroll down for this crazy graphical visualization, and we can see that love is 74%. I was kind of curious what it would do with a local newspaper article. So according to Google, the local.se is a local Swedish newspaper. You never really know what you're getting on the internet. But I found this cool article about Swedish students who had to jump into an ice hole as part of their PE class. So I'm going to copy that text, paste it in, and the resolution here is terrible. Analyze it. And we can see things like the emotionality is only 11%. If we come down here, we can see cheerfulness is only 9%. So this article author is not very cheerful as they're talking about students jumping into an ice hole. Yeah. Okay, so in this talk, we wanted to say, okay, it's more than just deploying an app, right? We want to talk about being agile and coding and doing DevOps. So let's jump in. What I'm going to do now is click Add Git. And what this will do is take a copy of that sample application and put it into a Git repository hosted over at IBM DevOps Services, the software as a service that we're talking about today. So it's taking the code, putting it into a new project for me so I'll be able to view it. So I'm going to open up my project, and now we're going to be in DevOps Services. And it's going to open for me basically the home page for my particular project. There's not a lot here because it's a brand new app, but I could input a picture, a description. I could invite members so that I could collaborate with my friends. And then I've got a nice read-only view of the code. So the first thing you want to do when you're doing your Agile planning is create a backlog. So let's jump in and do that. Right now what I'm doing is enabling the tracking and planning feature. Click Save. All right, now I'm going to jump over to tracking and planning. That's fantastic. Now I could use a little Jeopardy music, right? Okay, so I'm going to open up my backlog and I'm going to create a task to update the heading. And let's create a couple of user stories. So as a user, I want the text to be analyzed as soon as I paste it in. And let's do one more story. As a user, I want to compare two texts side by side. Okay, so now I've got a backlog. The next step in Agile planning is typically to prioritize that backlog. So I'm going to jump to the sprint planning view, and I can very easily prioritize my backlog, do a little drag and drop action, and argue with my product owner over what I think is most important, and get some sort of a ranked list. Next thing I want to do is create some sprints. So for this example, I'll just create 2 sprints. So typically what teams will do at this point is fill up their sprint based on their team's velocity. So some teams are going to have, maybe they can do 30 user stories per sprint. Some people, not 30 user stories, 30 story points. Some people, maybe they'll say, oh, I can do 5 user stories and 3 defects. For this example, let's say that I can do 1 task and 1 story per sprint. So since I've got my ranked list, my backlog is ready. This is very simple. I just drag the top items off until my sprint is full. And now I'm done with sprint planning, right? So Agile planning can be very simple in the cloud. So I want to go ahead and get started. So I'm going to assign this story to myself and indicate to my team that I'm going to start working on it. All right, now I'm ready to code. So I'm going to click the Edit Code button. And what this is doing is opening up the web IDE for my project. So this is where I can actually code within my browser. So a lot of developers get a little antsy about the idea of coding in a browser. And if that's you, that's okay. I like it because it's no setup. It's very simple. But you can always use your choice of tools. So if you're an Eclipse coder, you can do that. If you are a Notepad coder, you can do that. As long as you get your code into the repository, you're good to go. So my web IDE has loaded, but I can't read the screen, unfortunately. That is the views. All right, so let's go ahead and update the, I started the Ruby one, that's why this doesn't look familiar. Such small screen resolution. All right, let's see what happens. This is a live demo. Okay, so we'll update the heading, and then let's deploy it. So while that's running, it's basically taking a copy of my code and pushing it out to Bluemix, so we'll be able to see it running live. So you might be wondering, okay, how does it know where to put the application? How does it know what to do? So the sample application comes with a manifest file that really answers all of those questions. So it'll tell you what services are being used. This is our Watson service we talked about. It tells you how much disk space you can use. The host refers to the URL. The domain is mybluemix.net, but you're welcome to use whatever domain name you happen to own. All right. Any questions up to this point? This is a true experiment. I've not used the Ruby one before. So let's see what happens. Yay! Okay, so our heading was uploaded. It worked. Whew. Okay, so I've made my change. I'm a developer, so I'm working. I've made my change. It looks good. I've tested it. Maybe I've done some automated testing, and I feel good about it. So next thing I want to do is push my code to the repository. So I'm going to jump over to the Git view, and I'm going to commit this change. And now that I've committed it, I'm going to push it. All right, so now I can jump back to the track and plan view. Yes?
Do you actually know where your code has been deployed? I mean, geographically speaking.
In this case, you don't. So there's not permanent traceability in this particular case, because what you've done is you've just deployed it to your own instance. In the second demo I'm going to do, we're going to show you how to set up a pipeline so that you're deploying to a staging environment, and then you do have that traceability so you can see it. Typically, developers are just pushing to their own space, so you don't need a lot of permanent traceability.
What is the traceability? Is it country or more precise?
Can you say that again?
What kind of traceability do you have?
What kind of traceability? I'm gonna hold your question, and I'm gonna show you in the second demo, and if you still have it, we can go into it more. So here we can see my work item that's in progress. I can open it up. I could add a comment for a teammate that says I've tested out the change and it works well. Mark my story as complete and save it. And if I had, I forgot to do it, but I could also set up a link from my work item to the commit. So when you push, you can add a special tag that will set up the linkage for you, and then you've got that permanent traceability between your commit and this particular task. All right, so now I'm going to jump back to my slides for a bit and talk a little bit about DevOps. So DevOps means different things to different people. So I want to kind of get us all on the same page. So I know you're not supposed to use Wikipedia as a source, but I feel like Wikipedia has a decent definition of DevOps. So please indulge me a bit as I read this. So DevOps, a portmanteau of development and operations, is a software development method that stresses communication, collaboration, and integration between software developers and IT professionals. So DevOps is really about reducing the time it takes to get value out to your users. And the term DevOps, a lot of times people think about breaking down barriers between development and operations, but it's a lot more than that. It's anyone who's involved in your software development lifecycle. So that could be executives, it could be business partners, it could be designers, it could be suppliers. Anybody who's involved in your software development lifecycle needs to be involved in your DevOps strategy. And a lot of times when people talk about DevOps, they talk about reducing the customer feedback loop. So let's say you get feedback from your customers, you analyze it, you figure out what you want to do, you implement it, and then you rapidly send it back out to users. And then you start the process all back again. So I did a little study about DevOps in the cloud, and I found this graphic that I thought was really interesting. So at the top of the graphic, we start with people who are just kind of exploring the cloud. And then as we go down, we get to people who are like really deep into the cloud. And you can see there's kind of a correlation. As people get more into the cloud, they get more into DevOps. And I think that's because the cloud and the DevOps really go hand in hand. The cloud enables people to use a lot of those DevOps best practices and rapidly get changes back out to their users. Okay, so I was gonna have you guys brainstorm DevOps best practices, but you seem to not be feeling that. So I'm just gonna go into what some of my favorite DevOps best practices are. So we talked about cross-team collaboration, so creating that culture of communication between all of your different lines of business. Automated testing, and this is probably a pretty obvious one, but there's no way you're going to be able to send out changes to your users multiple times a week or multiple times a day even if you don't have automated testing. Your manual testers are not going to be able to keep up. And then the importance of continuous integration and then continuously deploying to your users. As you start looking at DevOps, a lot of times you'll hear about the continuous delivery pipeline. So I wanted to just kind of talk through this with you. So as developers, we like to think that things always start with us. So let's say the delivery pipeline starts here with developers. So a developer makes a change, tests it, does whatever sort of your process is, maybe writes automated tests, maybe it's a code review, whatever your team does. When the developer is confident with the change, he or she is going to push it out to your source control. Whenever the change goes into source control, that's going to automatically trigger a build, which is going to go into your build repository. From there, it's automatically going to trigger a deployment to your testing or your quality assurance environment. This is where you're going to run all of your automated tests, and probably your developer is going to come in and test and do a little manual testing, make sure everything works well together. When everybody's feeling good about those changes, then it's going to go to the staging environment. And typically your staging environment is identical to your production environment. And the reason we do this is so that there are no surprises when you push your changes out to production, right? So you want to make sure that your data is in a good state, all of your configuration files are in a good state, everything's identical, you're doing a practice deployment to your staging environment, and then when people feel good about that, you're going to actually push it out to production. The nice thing here is that whenever the business feels you're ready to deploy to production, you can do it. You're always in a good state. So because the delivery pipeline and deployment automation is so important to DevOps, I wanted to do one more demo for you to show you what it looks like to have a delivery pipeline in the cloud. Okay, so I'm going to jump back to my project and click on Build and Deploy. One of the nice things about using the boilerplate is it automatically sets up some of the pipeline for you. So I'm going to just open this up and show you what's happening. So the first stage in the pipeline is the build. Now this is a very simple Ruby app. It didn't need an actual build. You're not compiling anything, so the simple works fine. But if you were using a Java app or something else that you need to compile, there are a variety of options here, so you could set up an actual build. And you could also set up automated unit tests to run as part of your build process. What I like here is this checkbox, and it says automatically build when a change is delivered or pushed. So this means whenever you or a member of your team pushes code to your project's repository, you're automatically going to get a build and kick off the pipeline. Next, we have the deployment stage. And this is our first step in the deployment pipeline. And this was automatically configured for you, so everything is good here. But here we've got another checkbox to automatically deploy builds that succeed in the previous stage. So if your build passes and your automated test passed, you're going to automatically deploy. All right, and I'm going to go ahead and add a final stage, and this is going to represent our production stage where our users are actually going to view our product. So I'm going to name it production. Let's call it user modeling prod and give it a new URL. And in this case, I'm not going to check this box because I don't have any automated unit tests, so it's very unsafe for me to go ahead and deploy my changes to production. Okay, so it looks like my pipeline is saved. So let's go in and make a change and kick off the pipeline. More Jeopardy music. Okay, so I'm going to change my heading to say JFocus is awesome. I'll save it with Control S, which is nice. And now I'm going to be a really bad developer, and I'm not going to test my change out. I'm just going to go ahead and assume that I'm awesome, I know what I'm doing, and I'm going to push it to my repository. So this is something cool I didn't show the first time, is you can actually do a comparison to see what changes you made, which is a handy little feature. Okay, so I like my change, I'm going to commit it, and now I'm going to push it. All right, and now I'm going to jump back to my build and deploy page, and we'll actually see the pipeline kick off. So we can see my build is queued. And as soon as it finishes up, we'll see the build start over here on the deployment. So it's starting to deploy. So we can actually watch it run. Which is neat. So we can see exactly what's happening as it's happening. So while this is running, I'm going to pause and ask for any questions. Yeah.
Is it possible to run unit tests in your web IDE?
Is it possible to run unit tests in the web IDE? Not yet, but it's something that we're definitely aware of and hope to have in the future.
Pre-tested commit, push.
Can you say that again?
Is it possible to do like a pre-tested commit to your subversion or Git repository?
Is it possible to do a pre-tested commit? So I guess I'm not familiar with that terminology. So
Like you can do a commit and let the continuous integration server test your commit, and if it's okay, then the commit is committed.
yeah, so we don't have, so the question is, can you commit and then have a test run automatically, and then only if that passes will the commit go through? We don't have that capability in this particular product yet, but what you can do is commit and then have the unit test run as part of your build, and then it'll only deploy if those unit tests pass. Okay, so it looks like my build completed. So I'm going to jump back to the pipeline. And I can open up my project, and I can see, excellent, it worked. My heading was actually updated. So here's where I would run some more manual tests, possibly run some automated tests. And if I was happy with my build, then I could drag and drop it over into the production to see it actually running where my users can access it. So the question earlier was, what sort of traceability do we have as far as what builds are deployed? So here we can see in our dev stage exactly which build happened, which build is deployed right now. And I think that there is a history view. Let's see, I'm not really sure what I just clicked on. I don't know what I clicked on. But you can, there's the view logs and history. Here you can see the list of builds that have been deployed on this environment. Did that answer your question from earlier?
No, it was more where the server are.
Oh, just where the servers are? Session expired. So in our pipeline, we can see where it's being deployed right here. So we can see the URL of where it's being deployed. Is that your question?
I think you meant geographically.
Oh, geographically. So like where in the world it's being deployed? Yes. So right now, Bluemix has two different regions. There's a US South region and a UK region. And it's somewhere in that particular region. Yes, US South. Yeah, go for it.
Could you set up a load balancer?
Can I set up a load balancer? Yes, but I can't do it right here for you now. But Bluemix does have in the catalog, one of their services is load balancing and auto scaling. Yeah, any other questions?
So would you use this as like a full-fledged IDE for like a whole project, or is it just go in and do some quick edits?
So the question is, would you use this as a full-fledged IDE, or would you just use it for quick edits? I use it if I'm coding something that's just a scripted language. I love to use it, and that's all I use. We are going to be rolling out some new functionality over the next couple of weeks that's really cool, that's going to make it even easier to use it as a full-fledged IDE. But I know a lot of people on our team, when they're using, coding in Java, they're going to go use Eclipse. Any other questions? Yeah.
So you mentioned that you've got a UK zone.
Mm-hmm.
One of the problems with some of the load balancing services on other platforms, so Amazon fall victim to this, is that some of their kind of load balancing and routing services require certain pieces of information to go via the US, which breaches UK's safe harbor legislation on certain data protection, which is an adoption impediment for certain classes of people and problems. Do you know whether you can say only send my stuff through the UK services, or if some services are kind of US only, or what's the deal with that?
So the question is there a way to make sure that my stuff only stays in the UK region in order to comply with security laws?
Yes.
I do not have a solid answer for you. I'm a developer. I'm not deep in sales. So, but yes, we can connect later, and I can work on getting you an answer to that. Cool. Any other questions? All right. So as we wrap up, let me just say it's very possible to be agile, to code, and do DevOps completely in the cloud in order to bring business value faster to your users. So I just want to remind you that we have, you're not looking at my slides, are you? So tricky. My slides are up at jfocus.mybluemix.net. If you want to try out some of these concepts for yourself, I did a hands-on workshop yesterday morning. It was a 3.5-hour workshop, and you can actually go through and try out a lot of these concepts for yourself. And I've also got a few videos online if you'd like to take a look. And final plug is, if you are interested in trying out Bluemix here at the conference, I definitely recommend you stop by the IBM booth, because they are giving away a GoPro as a contest if you sign up for Bluemix. So definitely go try that out. So I'm going to stop there. Thank you so much for coming, and I hope you enjoy the rest of JFocus.
Thank you very much. Thank you.